I was born with blocked ovaries, and my husband took the initiative to suggest IVF. By chance, I discovered that he planned to replace the eggs with those of his first love. I pretended not to know and arranged for the eggs to be switched back. I also swapped my husband's sperm with that of my first love. No use keeping the genes of such an irresponsible man. 24 years later, I handed over 10% of the company's shares to my newly graduated son. Luna, who had been placed outside by my father, came home and looked at me triumphantly. "The child you worked so hard to raise is mine. Ian, my precious son." As soon as my son and I got home, we heard Luna wailing and sobbing. Relatives who usually kept their distance from me also gradually arrived, their eyes shifting between Luna and me, sizing us up. A cold sneer formed in my heart. I knew these people were all deliberately brought by Luna. I cast a cold glance at Ethan, who was standing by Luna's side. "What's the big deal today? Why bring so many people over?" Ian glanced indifferently at Luna, who was pretending to be fragile, then shifted his icy gaze to Ethan. Under my guidance, he had long known that his father had a mistress kept outside, but he never expected that this mistress would be brought home. Before Ethan could speak, Luna, tears streaming down her face, ran to her son. "Ian, Mom has finally seen you. Let Mom take a good look at you." Ian quickly stepped back, his tone cold. "My mom is Sophia. Don't go claiming sons recklessly." The way he looked at Luna was as if she were mentally ill. I slightly raised the corner of my mouth in satisfaction. "Truly my son." Luna staggered and fell to the ground, and Ethan held her tenderly. "Ian, you're being so unreasonable. She is your slap." I raised my hand and struck both of them across the face. "A mistress who must stay in the shadows dares to spout nonsense here." My tone was icy, my eyes full of disdain and disgust for Luna. Ethan suddenly stood up, abandoning his usual gentleness, raising his hand as if to hit me. Ian grabbed his wrist, looking at him with contempt. "What right do you have to hit my mom?" Seeing Ethan struggle, Ian tightened his grip and pushed hard, causing Ethan to fall heavily onto Luna. Ethan's eyes widened in shock, and he lifted his foot to kick Ian, but Luna stopped him. "Ethan, this is our son, don't hurt him." Ethan clenched his anger, his chest heaving violently, glaring fiercely at Ian. "If your own mom hadn't stopped me, I'd have beaten you up. Just graduated from college and you dare hit your old man. Sophia must have spoiled you." His eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at me, as if he wanted to tear me apart alive. Ian stood in front of me. "Only powerless men blame women. If you've got the guts, hit me directly." My son showed no fear in front of Ethan. The aura around him was strikingly similar to mine. "All right, enough of this nonsense." My great-uncle, who had just returned from the nursing home, issued a stern reprimand. As the elder of the family, everyone immediately turned to look at him when he spoke. He glanced at Luna and Ethan, a hint of scrutiny in his eyes. "You two made a big fuss to call us here today. What exactly is going on?" Ethan exchanged a glance with Luna, then cleared his throat lightly. "I have a very important announcement to make today." He looked at me and my son, took a deep breath, and deliberately acted as if he was about to say something but held back. I watched his entire performance with a cold expression, filled with disdain. "Ian is not Sophia's son." That sentence was like throwing a massive stone into a calm, still lake. Everyone was in an uproar, gasping sharply. Ian trembled, his eyes filled with disbelief as he looked at me. I gently patted his shoulder, signaling him not to rush. The relatives around us were like a boiling pot, their expressions revealing gossip and greed. A sly glint flashed in Ethan's eyes, quickly replaced by sorrow. When we were doing the IVF, the doctor said Sophia's eggs were likely to fail. To spare her the heartbreak, I contacted Luna and swapped the eggs. Listening to his words, I sneered inwardly. This irresponsible man wanted to turn the world upside down, all while pretending to have my best interests at heart. Ethan glanced at me out of the corner of his eye, hoping I'd lose my mind. But I remained calm, leisurely sipping my tea. He cleared his throat and continued, the reason I gathered everyone here today is to clarify one thing. He looked at Luna. Ian's biological mother is not Sophia, but Luna. The relatives looked shocked, then began to whisper among themselves, so this kind of thing actually happens. But there's nothing we can do, after all, Sophia's eggs are no good. Since Ian isn't Sophia's child, he must acknowledge his biological mother. Yeah, what's the use of a hen that can't lay eggs? If you ask me, Sophia should give up her position. The family business shouldn't be controlled by a woman. My gaze swept over the speakers. Ethan was quite good at finding allies, all of them pests who had been cleaned out of the company. They had long been dissatisfied with me, hoping that I, Luna, would fight with them and completely kick me out of the company. Then they could seize the opportunity to return and make more money. Ian looked at the relatives whose faces practically screamed drive Sophia out of the company, his expression growing darker. I sneered at Ethan. Ian is the child I carried for 10 months and gave birth to. He is my child and would never recognize anyone else as his mother. My voice was firm and resolute, leaving no room for argument. Tears instantly streamed down Luna's face, her expression filled with the sorrow of having her child taken away by me. Sister, Ian is my child. Don't deceive yourself anymore. I am his mother. What I said was true. Ian is indeed my biological son. Luna and Ethan really thought I knew nothing. 25 years ago, before we got married, I had already confessed that my ovaries were blocked and I couldn't conceive naturally. Ethan suggested we try in vitro fertilization. I agreed, only to catch him with Luna. That's when I realized he had been with Luna all along. No wonder he never got angry when I made excuses to keep him away from me. His eyes even held a certain joy. He had always had a beauty in his arms, saving himself for Luna. They planned to swap my eggs with Luna's. I anticipated this and, after they bribed a nurse to make the switch, I had the doctor replace it with another batch I had prepared in advance. I even had the doctor change the genetic father of my son, swapping Ethan's sperm for that of my childhood friend. Ethan and I were both eagerly awaiting the successful implantation of the embryo. That day, Ethan was very happy. He thought the child was his and Luna's, and when I was pregnant, he cared for me meticulously. He was even more afraid than I was that the child might be lost by accident. After the child was born, he excitedly shared the news with his parents, who were far away in Zhongcheng. For a full 24 years, I watched him treat Ian sincerely, dreaming with a smile on his face. He thought he had tricked me, but unexpectedly, he had been a father to someone else's child for 24 years. Ian may have been born to you, but the egg wasn't yours at all. Ethan couldn't help but interrupt my memories. His tone was mocking. Ian's biological mother is Luna. Are you seriously going to fight her for the child? I looked at Ethan with contempt, my voice icy. I think you've lost your mind, spouting nonsense here. Ethan's face darkened with anger at being scolded, but he held back his fury and argued with me. We can do a paternity test. Ian and you are definitely not mother and son. I'm divorcing you. You forced me to marry you with surgery fees back then. I've worked like a beast for you all these years, and I've had enough. When he proposed a divorce, Yu Guang was still looking at Luna. Ever since he cheated, he had been planning the divorce, scheming with Luna to ruin me. But if he thinks I'll be his doormat, he's got another thing coming. He was a penniless college student who married into the family, instantly doubling his worth and living a life of extravagance. And it was him who pursued me back then, begging me to pay for his father's surgery. I gave him status and money, yet he felt humiliated by me. Truly disgusting. I knew his cunning plan: divorce me, marry Luna, and use Ian, this son, to take control of the family. But he miscalculated. My expression remained calm, my tone indifferent. Fine, let's get a divorce. But forget the paternity test, I know Ian is my son. Ian stood firmly by my side. Mom, I believe you. Just by looking at us, you can tell I'm your son. Ethan and Luna's faces went pale. Ethan hurriedly reached out to grab Ian. Son, don't you even trust your dad? Ian sidestepped his hand and stood behind me, his attitude clear as day. Brother. Just then, a girl walked in through the door. She rushed over to Ian, her face beaming with joy. Brother, I'm Raina. Everyone present was stunned. How did the sister suddenly appear out of nowhere? Everyone's eyes flicked between Ethan and me, clearly eager to watch the drama unfold. But I wasn't surprised in the slightest. Raina was Ethan and Luna's daughter. When Ian was 3, Ethan and Luna secretly had another child. Bang! My dad, who had been silent until now, suddenly slammed his hand on the table. Ethan! What on earth is going on? My dad had long suspected something fishy between Ethan and Luna. Ethan's affair was already disgraceful enough, but now there was another child. My dad clutched his chest in anger. Explain yourself. The living room fell silent immediately. Raina's eyes instantly reddened as she looked at Ian. I've always known you were my real brother. Her voice choked with emotion. She kept glancing at me, filled with fear as if I might devour her. Mom often talked about you, saying you were handsome and an excellent student. Luna also choked up, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at Ian. Ian, Mom has missed you terribly all these years, wanting to see you every single moment. As she spoke, tears streamed down her face, as if she were the one betrayed. Raina misses you a lot too. I often took her to school to see you. Raina hurriedly nodded. Brother, I worked really hard just to get into the same university as you. She unlocked her phone, revealing many photos of Ian, one standing and giving a speech in a grand auditorium, others with roommates posing for graduation pictures. From freshman year to senior year, her life had been documented all along. Ian took a step back in disgust. Raina secretly taking photos, how was that any different from being a pervert? She had been quietly spying on him all along. Ethan wasn't idle either. He slowly approached my father. Dad, I have no choice. Sophia is your only daughter, that's true, but she can't have children. Someone in our family has to carry on the legacy. I'm doing this to ensure the family line continues. I knew exactly what he was thinking. My father's greatest wish was to have a grandson who could inherit the family business. After Ian was born, my dad was so pleased that he gave Ethan a 3% share and promoted him to general manager. Over the years, my father had poured almost all his resources into raising Ian. As long as the old man recognized Ian as his grandson, as the future heir of the family, even if Ethan, the son-in-law who married into the family, cheated, my father wouldn't kick him out. That was why Ethan dared to bring Luna home without any hesitation. He not only wanted to bring Luna into the family but even his illegitimate daughter, gambling on the fact that my father wouldn't give up on Ian, his outstanding grandson. At this moment, my father hesitated, glancing between Ian and me, but after much hesitation, he still couldn't bring himself to speak. I smiled, breaking the silence in the room. Since you want to leave an heir for the family, what's the deal with this daughter? Is she a bonus gift? It's the first time I've heard someone describe cheating in such a fresh and refined way. In the end, it's just about not being able to control the lower half. I turned my head to look at Ian, a hint of meaning in my eyes, and he immediately understood. Even if Ian isn't my biological son, I still love him. He is Sophia's only son. My money, real estate, and even 25% of the family shares, I'm giving them all to him. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth as I looked at Ian with nothing but affection and hope. Ian, I'm giving everything to you. Will you stay with me? Or will you go with your dad, who married into the family, and your mom, who claims you as her son out of nowhere? Ian immediately caught on, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. Mom, of course I'm staying with you. They already have other kids. I won't get a single cent from them. Just as expected from the child I carefully raised, not only did he call out their affair, but he also subtly pointed out their true intentions. Ethan and Luna heard that I was giving all the property to Ian. The two exchanged a glance, unable to hide the smirk tugging at their lips, a smile full of greed and secret delight. Ethan had long coveted the assets in my hands, I had no shortage of money. Not to mention the 25% shares I held, whose annual returns could be squandered for generations. The greed in their eyes was blatant as they leaned in, whispering, when Grandpa passed away, to secure Sophia's position as CEO, he gave all his shares to her. Her dad only had 10%, and back then, he gave you 3%. Luna said this while shooting me a sharp glance from the corner of her eye. She lowered her voice. Once Sophia transfers her shares to Ian, and Ian inherits Grandpa's shares, that will be 35%. That way, I'll be the largest shareholder, and she'll lose everything, forced out of the family. Ethan nodded repeatedly, convinced it was absolutely right. He looked at Ian with a kindly expression. Ian, Raina is a girl and will get married someday. Dad won't leave the property to her. Then he glanced at Luna, but you need to do a paternity test with Luna. If it's confirmed she's your mother, you have to acknowledge her and leave Sophia. Ian frowned, and I gave a slight nod to signal him to proceed. All right, but you all have to transfer the assets to my name first. He agreed, but naturally added a condition. I was overjoyed. My son truly understood my intentions. Money only truly belongs to you once it's in your hands. The relatives watching the commotion instantly grew excited. Ethan and Luna, those two scatterbrains, how could they not have thought of this? Each of them seemed to be envisioning a bright future. Ethan was just a figurehead at the company, lacking any management skills, and Luna had never run a business. If the family fortune ended up with those two, wouldn't they just be played around by that old fox? Ian is right, I'll contact the lawyer right now. My father looked at me with a conflicted expression. Though he favored sons over daughters and regretted not having a son to inherit the family business, he also knew that with the economic turmoil over the years, if it weren't for me, the family would have gone bankrupt long ago. He hesitated before speaking. Sophia, are you really going to transfer the property? I nodded. Dad, don't worry. Father sighed and slowly closed his mouth. After some busy work from the relatives, both Ethan's and my properties were transferred to Ian's name, leaving only $30,000 for living expenses. Watching Ian sign his name, Ethan and Luna's eyes shone brightly, as if they were already envisioning him flaunting his power within the family. I looked at my son, now the largest shareholder, and smiled faintly. But there was still one more person. I needed to snatch the property from Luna quickly. Luna, don't you miss Ian every year? Don't you love him? I watched Luna's expression change abruptly, but pretending not to notice, I continued. Over the years, I've spent over $10 million raising your son. I'm not asking you to pay me back. I love Ian the most. Just give the money to Ian. Ian immediately said, Sophia, you keep saying you love me. Then you'll give me the same security Dad did, right? My dad raised you all these years and secretly slipped you a few million, didn't he? I don't think you'd mind giving that to me, your own son, would you? Or is it, as Mom said, that you came back not to acknowledge me, but for the family fortune? Luna's face stiffened, torn with indecision. She felt reluctant to take out the money, but if she didn't, Ian would suspect her intentions. After thinking that she would get more in the future, she gritted her teeth and handed a card to Ian. Ian, Mom's money is your money. How could I not want to give it to you? Ian immediately looked at the lawyer. Please, Lawyer Lee, draft the contract. Luna clenched her hands tightly, her knuckles whitening from the strain. The pain in her heart was unbearable, like being cut, but on the surface, she forced a smile. The twisted expression was almost unbearable to look at. Ethan personally contacted the doctor for the test, watching every step carefully, afraid I might manipulate things behind the scenes. After the doctor took blood samples from me, Ian, and Luna, I slightly raised my head and looked at Ethan. And him, test him too. Ethan sneered aloud, I'm Ian's biological father, there's no need for a test. I raised an eyebrow. What, are you scared? Although Ian didn't know why I made the request, he still went along with my words to persuade Ethan. Ian was Ethan's cash cow, so he readily agreed. Leaving the hospital, Raina smiled as she walked toward Ian. Brother. She tried to hug Ian, but he dodged her, his tone cold, stay away from me. Raina was shouted at, and instantly her eyes reddened, tears of grievance welling up. In this moment, she looked exactly like that green tea Luna. Luna hurriedly coaxed, Ian, your siblings. You should be nicer to your sister. Ian patted the corner of his clothes that Luna had touched, as if it had been stained with dirt. Our relationship isn't confirmed yet. She's a stranger to me. I said calmly, my expression indifferent. Ethan, we're getting a divorce right now. From now on, you have no ties to the family. Luna hadn't expected me to love Ethan so much that I would divorce so decisively. Ethan also looked surprised, a flash of disdain in his eyes. I'm more than happy to divorce you. I knew what he was thinking. Without me, he still had Luna and Ian. Now that I no longer have any shares in the family, I have no value to be exploited. Neither of us has any assets now, so neither side can take advantage of the other. We just went straight to get the divorce papers. Luna was initially very happy, but when she heard Ian calling me mom over and over, she grew resentful. Taking advantage of Ian going out to buy something, she rushed up to me and boasted, Sophia, let me tell you a secret, Ethan never loved you, he only loves me. On your wedding day, he said his mom was sick, but in reality, he was with me. And Dad? He dotes on me the most. Over the years, we've often eaten together. Raina no longer looked fragile, glaring at me, she threw down her words, all the family shares now belong to our brother. He is the future president of the family business. Once the test results come out, just wait to be kicked out. I had no interest in the performance of these two clowns. I didn't even bother to spare them a glance and turned around to leave. Seeing my indifference, Luna glared at me darkly, you've held the family's fate as the sole heir, but now it's time to hand it over to Ethan and me. I stared into her eyes, a cold smile curling on my lips. Leaving it to you, Ian really is just a tool for you. Luna linked her arm with Ethan's, her face beaming with a victorious smile. You just realized? Too late. The shares are all under Ian's name now. I suppressed my smile. I'll be watching closely to see if you have the ability to control the family once the paternity test results come out. They planned everything so well, thinking they had me spinning in circles. But little did they know, I was the one truly in control of the whole situation, quietly watching their ridiculous performance. After the share transfer agreement was signed, Ian became the largest shareholder. I held a celebration banquet for him. Halfway through the party, a commotion came from the door, and I turned to see Raina. Her eyes were full of arrogance and pride as she shouted loudly, Ian is my real brother, and I am the family's heiress. Let me in immediately. The staff hesitated, not daring to stop her. I stepped out and shouted harshly, throw her out. The bodyguard saw me and immediately stepped forward to grab Raina. She struggled desperately, yelling and causing a scene, my brother is the family CEO. You lowly people, let me go. She glared fiercely at me, Sophia, you're not my brother's real mother. You've lost all your shares, what right do you have to attend the banquet and act so high and mighty, she shouted, clawing at the security guards with sharp nails. Just as I was about to lose my temper, Ian came out from inside, who's causing trouble here? Raina instantly burst into tears, brother, save me. She changed her expression faster than flipping a page, pointing at me with a wronged look, her voice trembling, this bitch won't let me in. Ian's face darkened further, shut up. If you dare insult my mother, I'll beat you to death. You're not on the guest list, you have no right to come in. And I'm not your brother, don't go claiming relatives willy-nilly. Ian. How can you not acknowledge your sister? Luna rushed over in her evening gown. Since it's a banquet, you should be introducing us to others and get us inside quickly. Ian sneered, someone, throw these two lunatics out. Seeing this, Luna immediately burst into tears and shouted, I am Ian's real mother, the family belongs to me, let go of me. Noticing guests looking over, my gaze grew even colder. The family's disgrace must not be exposed. I snapped, throw this shrew out. The bodyguards stepped forward at once, dragging the two outside. Luna spat venom, Sophia, you bitch. Once the test results come out tomorrow, I want you to kneel and kowtow to me. I watched her hysterical rage and smiled mockingly. I'm looking forward to the results too. As soon as the test results were announced, Luna was already shouting for people at the villa early in the morning. She was dressed flamboyantly, like a peacock in full bloom, showing no hesitation around me, exchanging glances with Ethan. I glanced at her, hoping to see that she could still smile so happily after the results. Besides my father, Luna had also invited relatives to the hospital to witness the outcome. I saw through her little scheme. She wanted more people to laugh at me. Fine, let her have her way, we'll see who ends up the joke. Before confirming the results, I smiled at Ethan. This is the hospital and doctor you chose yourself. You have no objections to the results, right? Ethan's face was cold. Of course not. I stifled a laugh. If he was this confident, then so be it. Before the doctor arrived, Luna smiled and took Ethan's hand. Once the results are out, the four of us can happily be together as a family. After saying that, she shot me a triumphant glance, full of pride and provocation. I turned my head and looked at Ian. Ian kept his head down, reading the documents, not even looking at Luna. Luna put on a show, but quickly switched to a smiling face. Ian, Mom is best at cooking. Tell me what you like to eat. She even took out an expensive watch from her bag. This is a gift to acknowledge our relationship. Ian didn't even look at it, his hands continuing to tap on the laptop. Luna's hand froze in place. Ethan stepped forward. Ian, your mom spent a long time picking this out. Just accept it. Ian gave Ethan a cold look. Why should I accept it? My mom is Sophia, not her. I can tell who truly cares for me, who truly loves and takes care of me. My eyes welled up with tears. My son will always protect me. Just then, the doctor came over holding the paternity test report. Ethan, Luna, and Reina all straightened up instantly, staring intently at the report, as if trying to see through the paper itself. Wealth and glory were right before their eyes. Luna whispered triumphantly in my ear, you blocked Ethan and me back then, now it's your turn to be kicked out. I suppressed the urge to laugh. The doctor opened the file, and Luna, unable to continue boasting, fixed her gaze on the report. To them, it was a pass to the pinnacle of power. Ethan struggled to suppress the smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, on the verge of jumping up and cheering. Tears of excitement streamed down Luna's face. Ian, very soon you'll know that I'm your real mother. Meanwhile, the most foolish Reina actually made a request to Ian, brother, I'm your biological sister. Our family owns an entertainment company, and you have to make me a big star. Once I'm famous, I'll be the family's spokesperson, and our story will reach even greater heights. She wore a look that said Ian should naturally agree. I looked coldly at the three of them acting so foolish. I hoped that after seeing the results, they would still be able to laugh. The doctor opened the results. According to the identification comparison, Luna and Ian, he looked up at Luna, who, seeing his hesitation, urged anxiously, announce it quickly. The rest of the family also eagerly awaited the results, desperate to get their share from Luna in the future. There is no parent-child relationship between the two. As soon as the words fell, Ethan sprang up, snatched the identification report from the doctor's hand, and said, this must be a mistake. Luna and Ian are definitely mother and son. Luna's legs went weak, almost causing her to fall. She looked at Ethan. Ethan, didn't you switch? Reina snatched the identification report for Ian and me. This, the doctor spoke, Ian and Miss Sophia are mother and son. Ethan froze in place. Impossible. I saw the confusion in my father's and Ian's eyes. I stood up and looked at everyone. I caught you when you planned to swap the eggs back then, and I arranged to switch the eggs back. I watched Ethan's face grow paler and paler, my mood improving all the more. My family doesn't need the inferior genes of an irresponsible man, so I replaced them with the sperm of my childhood friend. This news exploded over everyone like a bolt from the blue. My dad suddenly looked up at me, disbelief written all over his face. I took the last report from the doctor's hand and threw it onto Ethan's ashen face. Ian is not your child. Sophia. Ethan rushed at me in a fury, ready to hit me, but Ian kicked him away. He clutched his stomach, rolling on the ground. You bastard, how dare you hit me? I sneered. Ethan, have you forgotten? You married into this family. The child I gave birth to, no matter who the father is rightfully a member of the family. Luna suddenly rushed up to my dad. Old man, Ian is just a bastard. Who knows where his real father is from? If the bloodline is unclear, what if it ruins the family? He can't inherit the family legacy. My dad recovered from the shock. But he didn't even look at Luna or Reina. His gaze toward me was full of complexity. Sophia, is what you're saying true? I nodded slightly. It's true. Luna grabbed my dad's hand. Old man, Sophia gave birth to a child with an unknown background. It's a disgrace to the family. Ethan stepped forward to back her up. Dad, maybe that man even wants to take over the family. My dad shook them off. Shut up. Do you know who Sophia is talking about? Luna cried out, some shady character, who cares who he is? But this time, father didn't soothe her. It's Julian. What? The Julian family is a top-tier aristocratic clan. If we can forge ties with the Julian family, our clan will surely rise to new heights. Sophia. A deep, resonant voice came through. Bodyguards surrounded a stern-looking, imposing elderly man as he entered. I stood up and approached. Uncle. My father, seeing Julian's father, quickly rose. Brother Julian, what brings you here? Uncle glanced at Luna. I heard someone was bullying Sophia, so I came to check. My father stepped in to smooth things over. It's a misunderstanding. Sophia is the eldest daughter of the family, and her son is the family's new president. No one can bully her. Hearing this, I felt nothing inside. I knew my father's character well. Although he cared for me, his deep-seated preference for sons meant he never truly saw me as a suitable heir. Even though I was the one who helped the family out of its predicament, the one who brought it to its current stature, he stubbornly insists that the family business should be inherited by a man. And now, the only reason he righteously stands up for me is because of the Julian family. With the power of the Julian family, if our family can latch onto this influential ally, we will undoubtedly take a solid step forward and become a truly prominent family. So at this moment, in my father's eyes, I am no longer just a simple woman. Hearing this, Luna exploded like a powder keg, shouting, "How can this be? It shouldn't be like this." My father warned her with a sharp look, "Shut up." He lowered his voice, "You can't afford to offend the Julian family. I haven't settled the mess you and Ethan made yet. Cause any more trouble and get out of the family." Luna, having lost everything she had, pointed at me with resentment. If she says the child is from the Julian family, then it is. She turned to Julian's father. "Boss, she's talking nonsense. Don't be fooled." I sneered at her, calmly pulling the paternity test report from my bag. "This is the paternity test report for Ian and Julian." I held up the report for everyone to see. This was done by the Julian family's testing agency. Ian is the bloodline of the Julian family and clan. Not the bastard Luna claimed him to be. The relatives, all sharp as tacks, immediately turned against him. The Julian family is not someone we can afford to offend. After all, it was Ethan and Luna who schemed first. Sophia was just fighting back. I support Ian inheriting the family. Ethan collapsed to the ground, his lips drained of color under the contemptuous gazes of the crowd. I looked at the bodyguards as Luna was dragged out. When the bodyguards lifted Ethan up, he struggled fiercely, crawling and rolling until he reached me, then knelt down directly. "Sophia, it was all Luna seducing me. She wanted to push you out, so she came up with the egg-swapping scheme. I've always loved you in my heart. I know you love me too. Can we remarry? But I have never loved you. My cold voice exploded in his ear. He widened his eyes. What are you saying? If you didn't love me, why would you agree to marry into my family? I looked at that bloated face, unable to find a trace of the person I once knew. Ethan, I agreed to your pursuit because you and Julian look somewhat alike. I pointed to the relatives in the distance. I just took over the family business, and the foundation is unstable. Those old fossils want to push me out because I'm not married. I can only marry you to use you to stabilize them. You got money from me, but you're never satisfied. Now you're leaving empty-handed. It's your own fault. Ethan's face turned pale, staring blankly at me, muttering, "Impossible, impossible." His body trembled slightly, as if trapped in endless despair and confusion. I ignored him and went with Julian's father to visit Julian at the hospital. "Uncle, I've contacted a master of traditional Chinese medicine. He previously revived a coma patient using acupuncture combined with Western medicine." Julian's father's eyes brightened, and his body involuntarily straightened a little. "Really?" I nodded firmly, smiling at him. "He has reviewed Julian's case and said there's a 50% chance of waking up. The doctor will come tomorrow." Julian's father's eyes were red, his hands trembling. "Good, that's great, Julian can finally wake up." 3 days later, Luna and Reina's belongings were thrown out by the servants. Luna and Reina wandered outside the family villa for a long time before finally leaving the family in despair. She had struggled so hard to come to the family, only to be kicked out so quickly. She could only slink back to her own home, but then she saw Ethan. "What are you doing here? Get out. This is my house." Luna threw Ethan's things outside. Ethan didn't expect Luna to turn her back on him. "I'm your man, why can't I live here?" Luna raised her hand and slapped him across the face. "Ugh, freeloading man, get lost. If you hadn't pissed off Sophia, why would I have been kicked out by the family?" Ethan felt a burning pain on his face and suddenly shoved Luna away. "It was you who wanted to switch the eggs in the first place. If you hadn't targeted Sophia, would we have lost all our wealth and status?" Luna staggered back from the blow, eyes wide as she stared fiercely at Ethan. "Weren't you the one who wholeheartedly agreed back then?" She lunged forward, tearing at Ethan. "How can you, a grown man, have the nerve to blame me?" Ethan held her firmly. "Enough. What's the point of saying all this? We have nothing left now. Reina hasn't graduated yet, what about the tuition?" Luna looked at Reina, who was crying non-stop. "So what do we do? We can't sell the house, can we? That's the only house I have left. If we sell it, we'll be renting for the rest of our lives." Ethan slumped against the door, dejected. It's easy to go from frugality to luxury, but hard to go from luxury back to frugality. Suddenly, he slapped his thigh. "Go find Ian. I gave all my money to him. Let's go get it back from him." Ethan dragged Luna to Ian's villa. Ian was just about to leave when he ran into the two of them. "Why are you here again?" Luna grabbed Ian. "Give us back the money and the shares." Ian shook Luna off. "Why should I give them to you?" He got into the car, ready to leave, but Ethan fearlessly stood in front of it. "That 6 million is all my money." Ian glanced at him, his eyes cold as ice. "Your money? Have you ever earned a single cent? That was my mom's money. Besides, we've already signed the gift contract. That money is mine." Ian signaled the driver to start the car. Ethan was almost run over, furious as he cursed, "Beast." Luna watched the car drive away, her body suddenly swaying before she collapsed straight to the ground. Ethan was so shocked he stood frozen in place. Ian saw the scene through the rearview mirror and called emergency services. Then he closed his eyes to rest, as if Ethan and Luna had never appeared. Soon, Luna and Ethan's money was all gone. Luna couldn't possibly sell the house to support Ethan. With Raina about to start school, Luna forced Ethan to go out and work. "If you can't make money, then don't come back." When I heard the news, I immediately called a friend and asked him to arrange a job for Ethan. Ian and I sat on the third floor of the bar, watching Ethan bartend. Ian frowned. "Mom, this is way too easy on him." I put down my glass, my gaze deep as I looked at him. The real show is yet to come. Before long, a burly man came in holding Luna. Luna was pressed completely against him, acting intimately. Sitting at the bar ordering drinks, Ethan spotted the two right away and rushed over. "Luna, what are you doing here?" Luna ignored him and continued ordering drinks with the man. Ethan was furious and grabbed Luna. "Come home." Luna shook him off. "Who says I can't drink here?" The man stepped in front of Luna, glaring coldly at Ethan. Ethan's face flushed red. "What exactly is your relationship?" Luna scoffed and kissed the man right in front of Ethan. "Now you know what we are. Get lost, don't ruin my date." Ethan seemed not to recognize Luna anymore, his hand trembling as he pointed at her. "You actually cheated on me." Luna brushed his hand away. "Let me tell you, I was with him before I was with you. Come to think of it, you're the real homewrecker. If it weren't for using you to take down Sophia, I wouldn't even look at a man as irresponsible as you." She looked at Ethan with disdain, then suddenly smiled. "By the way, Raina isn't your child, she's his and mine." A vein bulged on Ethan's forehead as he glared fiercely at Luna. "You're lying. Raina is my child." The man beside them looked at Ethan with contempt. "Thanks for taking care of my daughter for 20 years, haha." At that moment, Ethan felt abandoned by the world, the gazes around him stabbing into his body like knives. The woman he had always loved had been using him all along. The daughter he had cherished was someone else's blood. Everything he lost was met with betrayal. He grabbed a glass bottle from the table and smashed it fiercely against Luna's head. "Bitch." Blood splattered over him and his face, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Shards of broken glass stabbed into Luna again and again. "You ruined me. I could have enjoyed wealth and glory, but it's all your fault." Luna collapsed to the ground, her face twisted with terror and pain. Covered in blood, she stretched out her hand helplessly, begging, Save me." Bang! The wine glass in Ian's hand shattered on the floor. He lowered his head, refusing to look at the horrific scene below. I stood above, watching the farce unfold beneath me. The police and ambulance arrived simultaneously, and Luna was rushed into the ambulance. Ethan, the murderer, was taken away by the police. Ian suppressed the fear in his heart. "Mom, is this the big show for tonight?" I patted his shoulder. "Ian, you are the future heir of both our family and the Julian family. You must never show mercy to your enemies." Ian's eyes were still filled with confusion. "But they have nothing left already, why continue?" "Because Ethan is slowly poisoning you." I looked coldly at the glaring blood downstairs. "What they want is not just the family fortune, but after using you, they want you to die quietly." When Ian was 19, he suddenly fell ill. After investigation, I discovered that Ethan had instructed the servants to administer a slow-acting poison. Only then did I realize they weren't after the child, but his life. I wanted to throw him in jail immediately, but I uncovered something else. I looked at Ian. "Your biological father's car accident wasn't an accident. It was also orchestrated by Ethan and Luna." At that time, Julian was about to confess to me. But Luna found out. She feared Ethan couldn't get close to me, so she hired a drunkard to try to kill your father by running him over. Thinking about this made my body start to tremble. These things were only recently uncovered by me. After Julian's accident, he broke up with me. Back then, naive as I was, I thought Julian didn't like me. Feeling abandoned, I decided to stop chasing after so-called love. Just as Ethan took the initiative to pursue me and my family was pressuring me to marry, I hastily agreed to the wedding. Little did I know, it was all a scheme between Ethan and Luna. They tried to kill my son and Julian out of revenge, and I endured it for 7 years. Finally, I let them destroy each other. Luna's boyfriend was a bar singer who often brought her along. I deliberately had a friend arrange for Ethan to work there. Whenever Luna showed up, they were bound to run into each other. Luna's injuries were too severe, she died. Ethan was convicted of intentional injury and sentenced to life imprisonment. He got what he deserved. As for Reina's biological father, he refused to pay for her schooling, so she dropped out. I heard she was forced to make a living selling drinks at a bar. They tried to set me up, but ended up reaping the consequences of their own evil. Miss Sophia, Mr. Julian is awake. Ian and I had just arrived at the hospital when a nurse came running toward me. Overjoyed, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from my throat, I dashed toward the ward. As soon as I entered, I saw Julian sitting up in bed, responding to the doctor's questions. "Julian, you're finally awake." Tears streamed down my face as I tightly grasped his hand. He looked at me gently and softly wiped the tears from the corner of my eye. "Don't cry, your eyes will hurt." His gaze fell on Ian standing behind me. "Who is he?" "Our son." I struggled to calm my racing heart and told him everything from the beginning to the end. I explained the IVF process to him, and he looked a bit stunned. But he quickly accepted it, smiling as he looked at Ian. "What's your name?" Ian stepped forward. "Dad, my name is Ian. Mom said it means wishing you peace and safety." Julian gently patted his hand. "That's great, your eyes are very much like your mother's." "Dad is awake now. From now on, Dad will protect you both and will never let anyone bully you." A month later, with the blessings of family and friends, Julian and I got married. The family business was completely handed over to our son to manage. I accompanied Julian to fulfill the dreams he had in his youth. Watching mountains and rivers, holding hands, growing old together,